Alrighty, so these are the parts of the crankcase. That's the top piece. And you see what I've done is I pre-folded it, including a little flange there on each edge, because it kind of rolls down and then has a little lip. So that's pre-done. Those, excuse me, are paper that goes on top of some cardboard cutouts from the laser cut parts, and those are going to be the ends. There's one on each side, which makes sense. There's a tube that goes along the side of the engine, and that's a rolled piece. You can see when you look carefully that you can see that it's rolled, and I just rolled it like we roll everything against a real thin piece of wire, and that's going to fit in that light gray piece ultimately. And then you've got the bottom, and that's going to have to be bent a little extra. I don't have it bent completely now, but that's because that's the pan underneath of the engine, the bottom of it. And so I start by putting a little glue on either edge of the top where the cylinders will go, and I put it on the main base there. That sort of is the engine. That piece, that base part, is two pieces of just paper sandwiched together, cut out and sandwiched together. And there's a forward and a back side. So you just make sure that, well, actually, it doesn't matter which way you put the top cylinder piece on yet. Although, yeah, it did, because it actually matches up. Those little light parts actually match up a little bit. So make sure you put it on the correct way. Then I put on an end cap. And these, again, can only go on one side because, like that one, can't see it right now too well, but it's got a little round part that sticks out, and that's the part that that cylinder is going to go along. And so that goes on that end. See that little piece right there with my finger? And just take some time to make sure you get it nice. It actually slides underneath the top cylinder piece, so it's actually, it isn't proud of it. It's actually like under a little shelf. Again, the design on the kit is really nice. So there's that end piece in, and there's that long piece that I'm pointing that out. See, that's that end. That little round piece matches up with that long gray piece, which is where that long tube goes. So now we put some glue into the other end and put the other end plate on. And that should go in the same way. Grab that, plop it in there. It gives a great amount of strength because those are the pieces, the only pieces on the engine that are made with cardboard that are a little thicker. So they give you a lot of strength. But you can see that's going to be the contour of the underside. And then those are the ends. And that end is, I think, I can't remember which end that is. Oh, that's actually the end that the shaft is going to go on for the propeller, and the magnetos are going to go over there. So there I'm putting on that little tube, which again formed very easily just by rolling it around a piece of wire multiple times till I got it to be like a half circle, and it fits real nice. There's a little dot of glue you see up in the front. That goes right there. And then you just make sure that everything is tapped down nice and against the thing. And now I'm starting at the bottom. It have little edge flanges that have been altered or bent. And you can see it's going to fit like that and go underneath and fit really nice. So I slowly add that on with some glue. This took a little bit of time to make it really fit well. It's not hard by any means. It's not like, oh, you're never going to make it work. But you do need to sort of push it down and, put some glue in there, push it down a few times. Like here I'm struggling. But you basically keep doing that and squeeze it. I have to readjust it here a little bit, make sure I have it correct, put some more glue on it, because you want to make sure it's even so that when you fold it down either side, they go up to the parts they're supposed to go up against. So it's a little bit of playing around. There's no mark lines that show you how they're supposed to go. But here I'm finally getting it, taking off extra glue, making sure things are drying and squishing together and starting to hold and grab. And just a little bit of playing around like that, and you will get it. Now, those parts right there, and there have little tiny, these little flanges, which are right here. Those are going to be cut out, colored, and then put on there. And in fact, I do that off camera because it's very easy. There it is. So I've added those pieces, and they just go on top, and they give a little extra meat. Those are actually where the engine's gonna, I guess, attach to the engine bearers. And so there's the tubular piece. So the basic, crankcase is done. Now you got to just put your tails on it. So the first thing I do is play around with the magneto area. So there is part of what the magneto is going to be. It's got two round edges that have been cut and I folded over, and then it's got that piece that rolls over. And again, that was rolled over around a piece of wire. And now I just start gluing those together. That's the part that the magnetos are going to sit on either end of that, and that's going to sit on top of a box-like structure that'll be cemented to the end of the engine, to that front end where the prop shaft is going to be. And out of these will ultimately be spark plug wires that go to all the cylinders and all, which I'll have to sort of figure out how I'm going to do that. But this, you put some glue on, roll that around, put the end caps down with glue, and then I'm making sure everything is colored. There's a couple places that sort of showed some white, and you end up with this little tiny cylinder. Fits very well. There it is. Now this is the part that is the square piece that little cylinder is going to fit on top of. So that has some, as you see, cardboard ends on it, which have paper on each end glued on previously, and you'll see that in the kit. That again gives this a little bit of structure. So I put that piece on, and I'm using the table as sort of a flat edge, and that way I know that I'm kind of square and everything is sort of flush where it needs to be. So I'm putting some glue around the inside here, and then the very last piece, which is the other end piece, goes on, and it fit really, really well. There's a little notch at the bottom of it. That's the bottom side. So just make sure those are matched up. But this just fits in, and it clicks in like a piece of plastic. It fit right in real nice. You just be careful you don't push it in too far. Just push it in so it's flush. Making sure it is, and making sure it's grabbing. And there you've got this little rectangular piece that cylinder is going to go on top of. And this is just a lot of pictures of my fingers squeezing together. So I'm putting pressure on the edge, and I'm also putting pressure on the top and bottom. So there it is. Looks good. Now it's ready to add the cylinder on top. And that just fits right on top like that. Glue it, make sure it's even. And on either end is going to be the actual sort of red-brown colored magnetos, which is where the spark plug wires will go. But there's that little tiny piece. I decided to go ahead and put that on the engine, and no reason not to. That's going to go on the side that the propeller shaft is going to be on, ultimately. And so that goes right there, and it's kind of ambiguous where it fits. But looking at the picture and looking at the picture of the real engine, it's just about centered, is all it has to be. And that'll be fine. Again, that light piece is where the prop shaft is going to go. So there's the engine. So then I start cutting out the magnetos, which are those red-brown strips and those little red-brown circles right there. And so I will save you the pain of cutting these out completely. But I did want to show you that this is what you got to do. So those are going to be the edges, and then they'll be capped with those little circular pieces. So those come off, and they have to be colored. And I pull that apart, and I cut these out like I usually cut out little circles with little tiny tangential lines. And I learned that from a Polish YouTube channel. Rather than trying to cut things out around in a circle, which never works, you cut them out like this, and you end up with something that actually is a nice circle. So those get colored on the edge, like that, and then they are ready to add. Then the little pieces that are the edging of the magneto get rolled. So there I'm rolling it in my little finger around a wire several times until you get a nice circle, and that they overlap. The edges overlap, and then you can then put some glue on it and butt join. So then put some glue on, and you just butt join those pieces. And the combination of butt joining them and then adding the cap will solidify those and strengthen them really nicely. So I'm just making sure that I'm butt joining them And now I'm adding the edge, the front piece that has the little holes for the spark plug wires. And there it is. Get off my thumb. There we go. That little one. They go on either side. So I go ahead and put that there. I make the seam side down. I figure that's an easier way to make it look a little better. But you just, again, center it. Make sure it's covering where it's supposed to. Get rid of some of the extra glue squish. And that's all there is to it. And you do the very same thing for the other magneto. And you'll end up with one on the other side. And there it is, magically on the other side. So there's the basic crankcase essentially done. Now there's more details go on there. Of course, cylinders, all that sort of stuff. But you know what? It is going to look pretty nice. And it has to be kind of nice because the dang thing is open. You can see it. And so the magneto side, like I said, is going to be where the cylinder or where the prop shaft comes through. And then that end is going to be where a crank comes out, I guess, for starting it, like an old Model T Ford. So off camera, because it was hard to do, I made the prop shaft. That's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 pieces of paper with little holes cut in them, and then a piece of piano wire for the shaft. You can see it's got a flat edge on the top, and so that helps to sort of key it in place. So I'm using super glue in this case because I figure this has to be kind of strong. So I go ahead and put that right in, make sure it's straight, make sure it's perpendicular, because that's, again, where your propeller is going to go. So it has to be good. I mean, there's a little wiggle room, especially with paper, which is nice that you don't have with plastic many times. So, but there it is with the prop shaft on. And that's the basic engine, done. That is the part I made, and you can see it's made up of multiple pieces. That's the prop shaft. The other shaft is going to be the one right next to it. That's the one that's going to be the crank. But there's that piece. That's just what is in that drawing. And then there is the square piece and the little round pieces of the magneto. And that is all of this right here. That's that whole piece right there. So you get an idea what the plans tell you and how you just convert that into something that you can actually use. There is the part that's going to be the crank that goes on the other end, which I probably will make next. And there it is. See, attached to that end. And then there's the crank to start. But there's the basics. Now I got to put some more details on it. Looks good.